Thanks. Thank you very much. You have put us all in a very, very difficult spot. It is always very difficult to conduct a session right after lunch. Right? I'm hoping that you've all had light lunch and none of you is feeling sleepy. By the way, there is a contrast in the AC temperature outside and here, which is making it less cozy, so I'm sure you are going to stay awake. All right. So first of all, thanks a lot for putting together such a great show, Nalcon guys. As the topic has been introduced, managing cyber risk in the connected environment. So if you look at the journey that mankind has had, we started from a stone age and right now we are in the digital age, right? Look at the communications that we used to do. I mean, most of that communication we have not done, but we only read in the history books. So our forefathers did not know how to communicate. Then they learned to communicate through the caricatures, through the symbols and pictures, etc. And then they said, okay, figured out, okay, birds can also be used for making communications, right? Then we moved to the telegraph and then arrived in 1990, which US government used for the first time internet for emails. Right? And thereafter, it just changed the world. And look at right now, there's so many instant messaging solutions are there on your fingertips, right, for making the communication. So it certainly has evolved tremendously. There is a big transformation that has happened in terms of the evolution of communication technology. Similarly, if you look at how the industry systems have evolved. So first revolution of industry, which is also known as Industry 1.0, that was based on steam gas. Did you all know it? That was based on steam gas. Then came the second revolution of industry, which was electricity-based production systems, which had the assembly lines. And the third generation of the industry, which had microcontrollers, microprocessors, and also the PLC and SCADA systems, some of them. So they were all controller-based. Till about 2 or 3 years ago, when the fourth revolution of industry took place, which is known as Industry 4.0, which is creating big boom in the market these days. And it is all about the connected world. Wi-Fi is there, your GSM is there, your big data is there, cloud is there, your internet is there, 4G, 5G, everything is there. So all the industry systems are being operated in this connected environment. Backbone, which is IT, is connecting and then completely moderating the complete assembly line and the throughput, output of the production line as well. So such is the massive transformation that we have all witnessed over last few years and decades. What we're going to be doing is, when this transformation happens, we have moved from the stone age to digital age. This is all presenting a lot of cyber risk, a lot of risk which relates to the digital environment, as we call them. We're going to be just delve into what are the specific risks which we as a security professionals need to be aware of, and how we can kind of take into cognizance their remedial actions, and we can just go back and then see either in our organization or the clients that we are servicing to, how they can become more effective when it comes to dealing with such risk in the connected environments. Look at the cars. Cars are connected these days, right? Vehicle-to-vehicle communication is happening. Our home automation solution is there. So you no longer have to turn on the AC when you reach home. When you are about 3 kilometers before home, you can turn on the AC, right? So such has been the transformation. We're going to be looking at what all this connected world presents the cyber risk to us, and how we're going to be, as a responsible security professional, addressing this. To take the proceedings further, I've got a panel from various facets of industry. I'm just going to be calling them upon. Kabir Mulchandani, he is the managing director with Synopsys, and he has been very passionate about secure software development, agile, including security in agile framework, in DevOps, also how product security needs to be taken to the next level. Kabir, please, if you can come on. Next, we have, thank you. Next, we have Ram Hegde. He is the Chief Information Security Officer for Genpact India. And he told me that he has seen Genpact itself transforming over a period of time. So surely he'll have a lot of insights to throw into. Ram, please. We have Vijay Puttaswamy from VMware. He's the Global Compliance Officer for VMware. And he is going to be sharing with us the perspective on how compliance, I can see smile on a lot of people's faces, how compliance treats and is going to be addressing such challenging environment. Vijay, please. Other gentleman that we have on the panel is Sudarshan Rajgopal. He is the cyber defense leader for Shell, Royal Dutch Shell. And he told me that he started his career as a hacker, ethical though. Right? So it is going to be quite a good conversation, I'm sure. All right. Thank you so much. So as we just said that the evolution or transformation of both mankind in terms of the way we use the technology as well as the industry has been immense. I'm just going to start with Kabir. Kabir, in your organization, where you have seen the transformation yourself, right, from chip design you started with, and then to software development, full-blown software development suite that you have, and also in the product development that you do, how do you inculcate the advancement, the cyber risk or the security parameters while the advancement of the technology which is happening, it's no longer every day being a new day, it is every hour a new hour now.
So yeah, thank you for the introduction, Gaurav. So I think from our perspective at Synopsys, we've kind of come full circle on this evolution. Synopsys, for those of you who may not be aware, is in the electronic chip design business. We have been doing this for over 30 years now. So started obviously very kind of independent, siloed type, chip design. And today, if we fast forward, to today's age and date, we are, it's highly interconnected. The whole supply chain is automated. So Synopsys started taking, cybersecurity seriously 7-8 years ago. It became, core to its business because of the trust and reputation, because they help create the chips that are basically part of this interconnectedness of everything. Devices, IoT devices, like you mentioned, the automotive manufacturers, all those chips are, part of that ecosystem. So it was very important for Synopsys to develop secure chips. So, we started, when Synopsys went through this journey of actually just the electronic chip design process, over time, they kind of, developed a science and art to do that in a very smooth and, safe way. And so then they said, okay, well, security is now becoming a big concern in the industry. So how do we take kind of our best practices from, chip design and apply it into actually developing secure software, which are, the guts of obviously some of these chips that operate, the firmware. So they started investing a lot, in terms of time and energy in learning in security. What are the risks in developing secure software? So just kind of, just a slight spin off on that. So they actually started a software integrity group, our software security, product and services line of business maybe 4 years ago, because they wanted to kind of start sharing now some of the best practices that they learned with the rest of the community and help organizations deal with this issue. So I think the first thing in this journey is, the traditional risks of operating like a mainframe system or a web app or a mobile app, you kind of need to throw some of those concepts out the window in an interconnected environment, because these are very heterogeneous hybrid environments made up of a lot of different components. There are a lot of products that go into this ecosystem, many products that you haven't developed and you don't know. It's kind of a black box that you're now introducing into your environment. So how do you really kind of look at that interconnectedness of all the different, security, lack of security, or, security that comes into your environment, and how do you kind of manage that ecosystem? So, that risk from a supply chain perspective is one of the key risks that most organizations face. Because usually, working with our clients, typically the mentality is, yeah, that's the vendor's problem, not our problem. But if you think about it, if something goes wrong, if you're relying on these products in your car and there is a safety issue related to that, it's going to become your problem. The car company is going to have to deal with it, not the OEM that developed that specific, IoT device that went into the car. So how do we really kind of change that conversation, right? I mean, in terms of, educating, our customers that they really need to look at security in these products that are coming in. We frequently hear things like, yeah, we don't have access to the source code, or, we don't have the ability to do certain tests. So really, how do you address all these kind of new types of risks? We need, talent that really understands how to kind of take a step back and look at this new ecosystem. Really what's important in this space is having a secure SDLC, or in some cases they say secure PDLC, like how do we kind of develop a secure environment? And sometimes there's a misconception because some of these interconnected environments, they say we don't actually create any software. We just kind of plug and play with all these different things and we just integrate. But even in this conversation, it's really important to understand what are some of the things that one can do to ensure that we're understanding the risks in this space and proactively managing to that. So I can give some examples of things that we have worked with our customers to do. One of the important things in this interconnected environment, because it's such a hybrid of different technologies, is to really understand the architecture. So doing an architecture risk analysis, really understanding, architecturally, how are these components getting embedded? Does the product manufacturer have any specs for security when you're integrating this product in? How does one device communicate with another device? Is that communication secure? So really looking at some of those architectural elements. From a supply chain perspective, it's important to work with the suppliers to ensure that you're doing due diligence on what they are producing. So while you may not have access to the source code, you can put requirements in the contracts with your suppliers to say you need to show me evidence that you have done a code review or you've done a pen test of your device. One of the things that we encourage, and we do it internally as well, is we also get evidence of malicious code detection. Did somebody put a backdoor in the code? We have some product vendors in the past that have had backdoors in the codes. So how do we really mitigate that risk? So I think really from our perspective, the conversation starts from that, from understanding the new risks in this environment and then addressing it one by one. Now, just what's kind of adding a wrinkle in this whole conversation is the, like the new types of technologies that are coming in, whether it's cloud or big data. The whole concept of, DevSecOps. Well, it really starts with DevOps, and then we have to kind of, change the conversation into DevSecOps. The problem is that most of the people who are developing these solutions, their focus is usability and functionality. Security is really not a feature that's important because their go-to-market strategy is important. They want to be the first one to get to the market. They don't want to be the last one. Security just adds more speed bumps. So how do you kind of use DevSecOps and some of the concepts, in your secure SDLC perspective to really make security kind of part of the process and not a bolt-on onto the process. I sometimes relate security to what quality assurance was 20, 25 years ago. It was always done at the end. And if you had to cut time in a development effort, you just took out the quality assurance and said, okay, we'll skip testing. Security, in a way has kind of become like this in this environment to say, yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it. And if we don't get to it, we'll just address it in the next release and the next release, and it just goes on, and you have a lot of gaps. But the safety issue in this environment is really important. And so, I think from our perspective, we are kind of using that safety as kind of an angle to really address security. The one comment I do want to make, while we hear this, is like, oh, we are complying with all the regulations. In many of these instances, regulation is either lagging or it's really not even effective. So you're doing kind of all the things regulations telling you to do, but compliance doesn't always equal security. So that needs to be an awareness as part of that risk conversation as well.
Thanks, Kabir. Thanks, Kabir. I would come across to you again. There were quite a few notes that I've made, but right for now, I'll just go across to Ram. So Ram, Genpact has had a phenomenal journey. You started with BPM as an organization. Now you are into multiple kind of services delivery, etc. And you've got offices across various locations, and you've got multiple partners which are connected too. So from your side, right from the strategy to the design to implementation and then managing it on a regular basis, how do you deal with such challenges, Ram, as a Chief Information Security Officer?
Right, and you're right, Genpact is known for its roots in BPM, but now over 20% of our revenue comes from digital services. And I'll just spend a minute talking a bit more about digital, because digital means, it's a loosely used word, it can mean a lot of different things. So I think firstly, when you're talking of risks in a digital, very important to clearly define what digital means. And for Genpact, I'll give specific examples. We have acquired AI capabilities and are using it for doing financial spreading. We are building a SaaS platform to do co-vigilance in the pharma environment, which we think is going to be highly disruptive in the life sciences space. We have tons of implementations of robotic automation and dynamic workflow, which again are helping organizations tune their processes and achieve additional productivity. So to us, digital is really about these capabilities, which we have either grown organically or acquired through acquisitions, where we are helping a lot of our clients in their digital transformation. So step one for us is being very clear about what digital is. Step two is being very clear about what the risks are. For us, a lot of these digital assets are layered on cloud technologies, AWS, Azure, Force.com, and so forth. And obviously, there is a lot of risk on cloud. Secondly, a lot of these are acquisitions were made. There's Australia, AI out of Boston, Dynamic Workflow, a company out of Israel, and so forth. And we're looking at integrating all of these capabilities. So that makes for more complexity on top of an already complex environment in cloud. Third, and Kabir touched upon it, we're doing it with speed, right? Because we need to get product out to market. We need to try to deliver value to clients quickly. So you're doing all of that at speed. Fourth, you're dealing with a lot of sensitive data, right? On top of it, you sprinkle compliance regulations. On top of it, you sprinkle client requirements in terms of MSAs. And then you've got a fairly heady cocktail, right? And now you need to make sure as you consume that cocktail, you don't get a bad hangover the next day. So our approach to dealing with this risk is multifold. First, again, it's very important to recognize and be clear what are the services, what are the risks. As Kabir mentioned, when you're talking of cloud, you have to rethink. You can't take your old concepts and kind of lay that on cloud. So specifically on cloud, we have been early adopters of some of technologies like CASB. We're working with a startup in Silicon Valley doing advanced cloud security monitoring. And as much as I'm a proponent for advanced technologies, I will also say, along with the technology, you need to have the right processes and the right capabilities. Otherwise, it can go for naught. And worse still, you could have a wrong perception of security. It's like taking a next generation firewall with all the bells and whistles and then passing in any rule to it. So you're not achieving anything, right? Secondly, you have to be cognizant of newer risks that come up. So as you're deploying robotic automation, right? So you've got a robot now which is running transactions. Now, what happens about the passwords the robot is using, right? How are those secure? If the robot is dealing with email, can the robot be phished? Can the robot be hacked? So you've got to think through about these newer risks and then make sure you're cognizant and you're developing a framework which addresses those risks. I will stress the point on process because very often I think we tend to think big complex problems need big complex solutions which are multi-million dollars. And I can give a lot of examples where we have made simple changes which have had a disproportionate impact. So we put a lot of emphasis on process. And lastly, it's about having the right capabilities. Right? If you don't have those capabilities internally in terms of resources who understand the technology, who have that domain expertise, or with partners, you're not going to make it. So in conclusion, I would say you do have to think very differently, but the fundamental building blocks of security, people, process, technology, partnerships, continue to remain the same.
Thanks, Ram. Thank you so much. So what is coming across as a common theme in both the gentlemen that's highlighted is competency and focus on the right processes before you get on to the technology aspect of it. All right, I'll just go across to Sudarshan. Sudarshan, yours is an organization which is physical, digital, physical, right? So right from the crude oil extraction to processing it into your midstream to kind of cascading into your downstream, where sophisticated ICS and SCADA systems are in use and high-end IT systems are also being used. So in this interplay, what are the few things that you are doing differently to identify the challenges and thereby addressing those challenges?
Thanks, Gaurav. You guys can hear me? Okay. That's a good question, what we are doing, but let me just explain how the oil and gas industry is and how Shell is actually part of it. We have upstream where we do extraction right from the extraction. So you need exploration, extraction, and you have a lot of technologies and tools which you use and which goes on the IoT front, which goes from a SCADA front. Then you have transportation, which actually moves the liquid gas to make it gas. We have the largest floating device on Earth, which is there. So then we have the midstream, which is the refinery where you're processing all the oil, crude oil and stuff like that. And of course, then the retail where we all go to Shell and fill gases, right? So there's a lot of data which comes in, and a lot of technologies which we use in are pretty new, and also we have the range of legacy system. The challenge is to have an event correlation. The challenge is to look at everything at one point in time or real point in time, and make sense of what the data is. So there would be one area to look at where we say that how the communication is happening, and then there would be another area that whatever data is coming, how much of it is garbage and how much of it is interesting. I remember the previous session when it was happening, they were talking about something similar when I stepped in, about there's so much data coming in, but which is correct and which is not is what you need to point out. From a technology perspective, we have, right from drones to bots. So on if you have an offshore where you have a rig which is right below the sea, there are robots which are working for it, and you don't want to lose communication with them because they're supremely expensive for you. And a small thing here and there can cause a lot of damage for us. Similarly, when you're on the retail front, you don't want a client to wait for you for long, or their data to be stolen by the perpetrators just for whatever cause it might be. And it can happen from anything from a chip level to a process level, or to the technology itself which is evolving. So there's a lot of pressure of moving into the newer technology, supporting the legacy technology and the transformation itself. And by the time you transform, you have the next thing to come in. So how do you gather all this? Right now, we have 6 asks in the IT area which we are working on, and that would be one of them. I mean, if I can name a few, would be cloud is one of them, mobile is one of them. Then you have the artificial intelligence which you're talking about. So, so these are few areas which we are working on to see how we can tie up entire thing together and come out with a unified, consolidation or a unified way of working. Having said that, it's not that easy. The sheer size of organization and the sheer size of operations, what we have, it makes it extremely difficult to get everything into one place. So yes, we work in parts. We try to tie up those parts and see how we can look at. So it's a zoom out, zoom in kind of a way we look at it. I hope that's what you were asking about.
Thanks, Sudarshan. We'll come back to this zoom in and zoom out again. Yeah. All right. I'll just go across to Vijay now. Vijay, I think the 2 panels very clearly spelled out the compliance-related aspects. So you, who is somebody into the global compliance function, how do you see compliance function taking a role as of an enabler to support the business, rightly identify, right size the requirements, and also making sure that these challenges, compliance related rather, in this connected environment are dealt with in advance rather than retrospectively?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. When we talk about the connected world, right, we are talking about different geographies being connected together, different market to be connected together, different industries to be connected towards, each other, right? So in that very sense, the compliance obligation becomes almost like a Mount Everest, right? So each and every requirements kind of trippers. There are redundancies, there are inefficiencies. There's one geography saying other, there's another geography which is saying other about compliance, which one to do, right? So the connected world poses a complex degree of risk, when you have to run an operations at a global scale, right? The compliance regulations are ever changing, they're growing, and the implications of non-compliance underlines, a very important need to have an effective, collaborative risk assessment process at a management layer, right? It should be top-down, and the tone at the top must be very, very strong when it comes to assessing and knowing the risks, right? So, having said that, one of the key things that I would like to emphasize here is when you're trying to do a risk assessment program or a compliance program at a global level, you will not know anything and everything, right? So you need to collaborate with people, people very specific to the functions, people very specific to geographies or business units, because they truly understand the risk that they are working on day in and day out basis, right? So working along with them, trying to know what are the risks they face, part of their day-to-day operations, and how can you effectively mitigate or put a compensating control to those particular risks that they have identified is going to be very, very crucial. So one of the key highlights that I would like to point out is collaboration, right? Collaborate, gather more information, work with cross-functional teams, understand, how their day in and day out operations are, what are their SLAs, what are their commitments to release new features or new products to the market, and how can you become an enabler, right, by giving them right knowledge about the controls that needs to be implemented to comply with something, right? So if you look at the trend, mostly across geographies, the governments are putting, or the regulators are putting more restrictions around personal data as well as financial data, right? So these are all the key things. If you look at every geographies they are talking about, even India is talking about a privacy law, or enhancing its India Companies Act to deal with financial transactions and things like that. So I can talk about more, very specific risks. But at a very high level, I would really emphasize on, you need to have a proper risk management function, which is supported by the top management. And this risk management should collaborate with the actual people who are doing the business, who are doing day-to-day operations at the respective geographies or at the respective business units.
Thanks, Vijay. While each one of you were speaking, I just took note of some of the keywords there. So, Kabir, you mentioned safety, right? I personally believe that in this connected environment, more than security, I think equal emphasis has to be on safety as well. Just imagine a car which you're driving, which is connected car, and somebody just hacks the car. All right. I'm not going to be worried about what cybersecurity implication it may have. I'm more worried about the safety then, right? So how do you think? And then Sudarshan, I would like to draw you because your organization has set the benchmark in terms of safety measures. So how do you think safety can play a role to draw attention across all the levels to deal with these risks and channelize it through the cyber risk as well? Kabir, that's for you.
Yeah, so I think, the experience that we have, in speaking with car manufacturers in North America and EMEA, for the longest time, they really were not really concerned about security, right? They weren't, and then recently in the last 4 or 5 years, there have been some incidents. Fiat Chrysler is one example where they've had some issues with their, car computer systems, and that's resulted in some deaths or accidents. So, they have now started to kind of take that much more seriously. So I think in the past, it was a very theoretical conversation to say, yes, somebody can hack into your car and, go and, kill the people in the car, and people would just not buy it, and as in this industry, I think as we have seen, something bad has to happen for people to really kind of get that wake-up call. So I think the automotive industry, we are now seeing a lot of focus on, security through the safety angle. I think, car manufacturers understand the reputational damage that comes with, with the car recalls and the costs of, the fines and the penalties that they get from the regulators. There is just too much. And there have been some, recent experiences that have really made all car manufacturers kind of rethink their strategy towards security and safety. So safety and security through that has now become one of the key initiatives for every car manufacturer. All the automotive, autonomous self-driving cars. I mean, this is going to be a key element because if somebody can just hack into some of these and just like with a remote control drive the car with you in it, that's going to be a huge problem. We also see similar issues with the medical device industry. If you think of an automated insulin pump, that'll basically test your blood sugar and then automatically inject insulin, to your body. If somebody can remotely hack into that, so I think now the use cases have become real. Hackers are now, we've seen the hackers diverting their attention from financial services because they've, kind of built up their defenses. It's getting a little harder. So now we're seeing the hackers getting smarter and say, okay, let's try and, do like hold these systems hostage. And then we can do ransomware attack, type of ransomware type situation where we'll hold the companies hostage. So I think because these events have become real, I think now we're starting to see a lot more awareness in this space.
Thanks, Kabir. So with that, I'll just go across to Ram. As a CISO, do you think safety should become part of CISO charter also? I know I'm putting you in dock, but then it just came across.
Yeah, to me, it's really more of the evolution of cybersecurity, right? And I think historically, we have talked about cyber in terms of the confidentiality aspect, right? It's about, protecting data, hackers take data and identity theft and using them, misusing the data, right? And now we are just seeing as technology advances, as we do more in this connected world, that the other aspects of security, when you talk of CIA, are becoming more relevant, right? So you're talking ransomware, you're talking disruption, that is in effect about availability, right? And then you get into altering data, the conversation about fake news and so forth. And the attacks of the future undoubtedly are also going to focus on integrity. So my answer, I think, is really that it's just an evolution. It's just that different aspects of security will continue to gain different attention based on specific use cases. And this probably more so as insurers get into the act. And now you have, if cars are under regulations and you have recalls for defective systems, right? But should you extend that to connected cars and to technology? Historically, product liability has been an issue that companies have gotten away with. But I think this will now provoke interesting conversations now that you have potential loss of life in question.
Right. Thanks, Ram. Before I just kind of go to the audience, I had picked up one more item from, I think, that some of you talked about. That was around competency and talent, right? So what kind of talent related risks that you see when it comes to dealing with cyber risk, more so in the digitally connected environment? What are some of the challenges that, and this is for all of you, that you see for building a right talent set of pool and then upgrading the skill set, building the competency, and then sustaining it as well? So what are some of the challenges that you see, and then how your perspective, you're addressing it in your organization? So it's a free question to all of you.
Okay, let me take it then. I think you're kicking the hornet's nest. I think talent has multiple facets if you look at it, and that's a challenge, I'm sure, across the globe, or across India, what we see. Let's start from the beginning. I think our education system itself spoils us, or our social fabric spoils us, where we believe that every year we need to pass the exam and become the next, and run behind a job role or a job title rather than a job role. And it puts a lot of pressure. And then the social pressure. Oh, you're still the same. Oh, you're still the same. My son is this. My son is that. I think that's what spoils the entire fabric of when you look at it from this perspective. Secondly, I think us as industry are to be blamed that the depth of technical knowledge, because of retaining a talent, the depth does not come in from a technical perspective. It becomes an administrative in the guise of a role of manager. That's what we make it. And if I may use the word, we're creating, I can't find a better, but we're creating managers in terms of, we're creating bad managers of a good techie. So we need to find a way how we can give them, a technologist also equal elevation as we do for a management or a salesperson, especially in your industry, Gaurav, and nothing against it. But if you look at it, and I've been part of that industry, if you look at it, the challenges, people need to attain numbers, and numbers in terms of buying numbers. So we tend to lose the focus on technology. That becoming part of it, I think the bigger challenge, which I look from a talent perspective, barring these challenges, and of course, everyone would talk about it. The bigger challenge I see is we live in a connected as well as a collaborative world. So like our company has a lot of vendors, and we collaborate with a lot of partners. Now, if they're hygienically not, understanding what security is or what safety is, as you said, it becomes a huge challenge for us as an industry, because we rely a lot on the partners. It can be right from giving in a component which might be going into a new product or an R&D, and or a hacker who's helping us out to hack into our systems and say, hey, I found this, which is very good because they're trying to help me. But in that euphoria, if this person is talking in a public place to his friend and saying, hey, this is what I found, before we patch the system, we're in deep soup. So that also comes in how do we curtail the euphoria, though everyone recognizes it, but just chest thumping or saying I'm a hacker, no one can hack me, is something which we need to teach people, that there's always a smarter person sitting outside, and let's not get carried away by these things. So I think there are facets of it which we need to do it. But hiring a talent with the depth of the knowledge and person who has longevity in that, I think that's my biggest challenge, which I look at it.
All right. Ram, you want
Yeah,
to take?
so I'll be a bit long-winded, excuse me. Interesting topic. So I'll answer it in 3 dimensions, right? In terms of the supply of talent, right? You just need to walk the halls here, you feel the energy, you see the passion, right? So I think I'm incredibly optimistic in terms of looking at the potential and how this is turning out. Secondly, in terms of how, as a company, to your question, how is Genpact dealing with talent and making sure we can attract and retain talent, right? So I think there's multiple aspects to it. So as Peter Drucker said, strategy, culture beats strategy for breakfast, right? The Genpact version of that is culture beats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So there's a lot of focus in the company on culture. So I won't overemphasize that point. Secondly, we are fortunate that our program is very broad and focuses on different aspects, from client assurance to cyber defense to information protection to culture, metrics, governance, and so forth. So it's a good place for individuals to get exposed to various aspects of security. I talked earlier about how we have been early adopters of a lot of leading edge technologies of a program. And the reason I'm talking about this with a bit of credibility is we have grown our team from 8 to 50 plus in a matter of 3 years. And for the last 2 years, we have won global awards competing with the Fortune 500. So it's this same team which has joined and has delivered this progress, which gets me to the most important point is if you create an environment where people recognize that they're making a difference, there's support from the board level down, there is internal and external recognition, then I think you start tilting the scales in your favor. And you don't have to take my word for it. I think some of the Genpact team members are out here. Raise your hands, you can have a conversation with them. The third aspect I'll touch upon, which is sort of guarding the optimism a little bit, is a couple of trends which we see, which I think are a bit of a concern across, right? One is around this notion of offer drops, right?
He said
You
offer
sign
drops,
up,
by the way, in case you guys could know.
and you sign up and then you kind of back off. And I think that really goes to talk about the ethics and professionalism, which, I mean, we are all professionals, so those have to be foundational building blocks for us. And then secondly, the concept of job hopping, right? So what I would offer is from my perspective, that might help in the shorter term, but it's only when, and especially when folks are looking for a career in a large, global, complex, multinational environment. It takes time, first of all, just to understand the company, what it does. It takes time to really integrate and add value. And in doing that, you develop a lot of skills, which will really stand you in good stead longer term. So it's a bit short-sighted to try to think that, okay, I can just go and check my box here and then move on and so forth. So those are my comments.
All right, thanks. That was quite insightful. Okay, I have a couple of more questions, but I'll just hold on to them. I'll just go across to our audience right now. In case you guys have any questions, just raise your hand and then shoot.
We are already over time, so we'll take one question from each side.
Hi. We have heard about the safety and cybersecurity of, like say, cars, but we haven't heard about the safety and cybersecurity for industrial control system in traditional industry like cement, steel, which have industrial control system which runs an operating system as old as Windows Server 2003, sometimes Windows XP. So how do we defend them? So like these systems are very expensive, can't be replaced easily. We can't replace the operating system by without replacing the equipment. So how do we defend? What about the cybersecurity safety of those kind of systems?
So you directing that question?
Yeah,
to me?
anyone.
I was just wondering if I'm talking too much. So I think that's a real problem. having the industrial control systems which are legacy and patching them is a challenge because this is on production. But there are ways people are doing it and we are working on it. Now there are, like Gaurav pointed out, we are very high on safety, as in human safety comes to us first and then comes business. So if we see anything which might go compromised, we have a standard code of practice, what we use. And we would systematically isolate it as early as possible without any damage. I would cite an example for it. We had Harvey in US this year, and our one of the plants was shut down just because we wanted safety for all the people who were working, and we incurred some losses, but for us, human life was high. There is a program in parallel, what we are running for the age-old system or the legacy system, which I started when I was talking about, that there is a program which we are specifically running on these areas, if we can patch it, if we can replace it, and what is the timeline for it. So that's on a high level what I can give you for it. But there is a program running for that, and I think it's across the globe. Every company is following it.
Anyone on this side? So,
yeah, this question is again for Sudarshan. As I know, oilfield service providers, and they usually now depends on legacy systems more. How you're planning to go to the cloud and provide the solutions to the client on the secure cloud kind of stuff? That's one question. And
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
so yeah, how you people, going to provide the services to the clients on the cloud? So it's from legacy systems to the cloud, the extra systems to the cloud.
Okay, let me rationalize the question. So what I think he's asking is, when you are going to adopt the cloud from legacy systems, how you go to migrating in a secure environment to the cloud?
Is that what, I thought he was more from a services perspective.
No,
Yeah,
that's
so
that's
I just gave the frame for your organization.
Yeah, no, I was about to correct him. So there is a program which we are again running to move certain systems from in-prem, as we call it, on-prem system to cloud system. And there's a secure channel which we are creating through which we are pumping in the data to the cloud. And then that's, so we have certain norms which are very stringent when it comes from a security perspective. So there, if the data is of different kind of criticality, which kind of cloud does it go into, and how does it go into? That's how we look at it. So for example, if it is just regular data, it might just pass on through a confidential conduit from our systems which are there right now to the cloud, and it would take some time. And then it is program by program what it moves into. Was that your question? Because I'm still reeling under your question. I couldn't follow that. Does that answer what you're asking for? Thank you.
All right, thanks. So you just told me that we are not doing very good on time. So but I'll take about 30 seconds. I have to ask really a question, and that is for Kabir. Kabir, can we expect chips in future which cannot be broken into?
I wish I could predict the future. I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Are you trying us all to be out of job?
All right, no, so that was a question for pun intended. All right, so I'll just summarize what panel talked about. It's whether it is connected environment or disconnected environment. The three pillars, people, process, technology, they remain the core. So equal emphasis has to be given on each one of them. Kabir pointed out a very good point in heterogeneous environment, architectural analysis. Architectural analysis needs to be thoroughly done to find out where the threats lie and where perhaps the compromise of information can take place. Safety, which is hopefully going to be leading the security. And lastly is on talent. Talent continues to be a risk for the business, not necessarily only for the connected environment. Yeah, so those were the 4 points that I picked up, and that's how we summarize it. Thanks each one of you for your time today. And for all of you, the panel is going to be around. In case you want to catch up with any one of them, please do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you.